Hi, everybody. It's Eric Dorward with the Spartan Rocketry Club here again after a prolonged absence. Because the truth is, doing all of these fins took just about forever, and I was not as motivated as I could have been to get them done. However, they are all done now, so it's time to actually build the rest of the rocket instead of just shape balsa fins. I have to say, this would have been less pleasant if these were made out of plywood, I think, even though I wouldn't have had to laminate them myself, it would have taken a very long time to sand them down. It was time consuming enough as it is. These went faster because they're thinner, so there was less material to remove, but it was still it was still a slog. I had to push myself to do it. But anyway, we're finally ready to start actually assembling things. First things first, I'm not going to do all of this because it's not as exciting as it potentially could be, but this kit has three sets of fins. And one practical consequence for having all those fins is that it's not going to be super stable. Now, the real rocket, of course, has an actual guidance system, and it's a multi stage rocket. So it needs multiple sets of fins in order for it to be stable as each successive set drops off. The way that we're going to deal with the instability caused by all the extra fins is we're going to put weight in the nose cone. This is a tried and true way of balancing things out. So you want the center of mass to be above the center of pressure, and that's created by the fins. So the front fins push it the wrong way. To counteract that, we're going to put weight in the nose cone. Now, this is not like a new technique. They were going to put four balls of clay into the nose cone here. So in it goes. This is a nice wide opening, so it's not particularly hard to get it where it's supposed to go. But the tricky thing is, so I usually use a scrap of wooden dowel. This is one I use for painting, but it doesn't quite reach. And it's close, but not quite. It doesn't quite reach to the nose. So I need something else long enough to do the job and sturdy. So what I'm going to use is my launch rod. This happens to be a 3/16 launch rod, which because it was just available, um, my 1/8 inch rod was in use. So I'm just going to do one of these numbers. And you can look down the barrel of this to see how you're doing. It doesn't need to be particularly perfect or good, honestly. And you probably don't need to ball this up very much. Maybe even like that little. Down it goes. And yeah, that one, since it wasn't particularly long, didn't snake up very much. So I'm going to have to be a little more careful pushing it into the nose cone. But yeah. Now, it is worth noting, too, that later in the instructions it says that this may not be enough weight in the nose cone. So that could be a problem, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. There are two more pieces, but we're not going to do that right now because it's not terribly interesting. But what we are going to do is we're going to start assembling the lower portion of this. So hence all these pieces. I had, in the intervening time, of course, I put a layer of plastic primer on all of these. And I painted the black stripe on this one because I think that would be particularly annoying to have to do while the rocket is assembled. This part is going to be silver, and I believe this part's supposed to be red. Um, the silver part isn't going to be terribly fun to do, but that should be manageable. I'm not gluing this whole thing together just quite yet anyway, but I don't think I'm going to paint any more of it. It is worth noting, though, that I did paint most of this piece silver, just because it's all silver. It should be pretty easy to deal with. All right, anyway, so what do we need to do? Well, the instructions say that I needed to draw a line on this piece. So I did that. I used the door jamb. That's ready to go. I need two B centering rings. So you can certainly use a knife to cut these out, but I generally find that's not terribly necessary. And I found that most of the time when I just punch these out by hand, the end product is pretty much indistinguishable from had I done it with a hobby knife. I mean, I wouldn't do this with balsa, that's for sure. And you do need to be careful you're not warping these when you push them out, but those are pretty big. They came out pretty well. All right, so the instructions say I need to get this tube here, which is, this is important, you've got two that are the same diameter. This is the shorter of the two. So the long one, that is where the nose cone is going to attach. This piece, I am going to put these around, but before I do that, it calls for me to go get part of the there we go, the retainer system here, and yeah, that's going to be part of this anyway. This part screws on. Oh, there it is. Here's the other part. So I'm just using this to dry fitting it. Now this screws on to hold it in place. It's a nice little feature of this kit, but we don't need that part. We're only using this bit to get everything in place where it needs to be. Why we're not marking this, I'm not entirely sure, but we're not. Anyway, so this part is, there we go, goes like this. All right. And now I'm going to put the centering rings, at least one of them, I'm going to slide it down. And this is just to test fit everything. And I believe to get, ooh, that was a little stuff there, to get the centering rings in the right place. So it does say it's probably best to stand it up. Well, we can do that. All right. Then it says I'm going to take E and I'm going to drop it over the top. Now the deal here, I believe, is it's going to slide the whole way over. That's a good question. Yeah, it's supposed to. So I'm going to gently, actually, you know what I'm going to do? Even before this, I'm going to try to get this over this piece. There we go. Yeah, to just make sure it fits on. It does. Great. Back together go the pieces. Oops, that's the wrong order. Okay, anyway, so there we go. This piece goes over the top, and I'm going to, you know what the problem is? It's the centering ring that's making this difficult, I believe. Because the centering ring does need to fit snugly. Snug it is. There we go. Okay. All right. Got that. Yeah. Okay. The next thing it says is to put the other centering ring on. It doesn't really say how far in that ought to go. It just, it says, the only instruction it gives is align the seams with the line I drew. Well, that means like so. There's a seam there that I drew, and there's a seam in the blow molded piece right there. And then this part, again, I'm supposed to line up a seam. Well, here, is that a seam? Yeah, I guess so. And then this goes right on top like so. And again, you probably can't see a whole lot because of the limitations of the technology here. All right, so, whoops. No, retainer part fell off, but that's okay. All right, so the whole production here was just to test fit all this stuff. And I believe the goal was, by doing this, I pushed the centering rings to where they ought to be inside of all this stuff. So now I'm going to take the plastic pieces off carefully. Okay. Okay. And Yeah. Well, there they are. Hopefully that's where they're supposed to be. Although honestly, I'm quite confident that one of them got dragged along. So I guess that's okay. I mean, it's going to be glued to this more than anything else. Also, I'm going to reassemble all this stuff, which is kind of ridiculous, but that's okay. I am supposed to put glue on all four of the seams between these two, so interiors and exteriors, and then I'm going to reassemble everything, and I have to be somewhat quick about it, apparently. Well, okay. Now, I thought about using epoxy for this step because this isn't, a completely irrelevant, piece of gluing. This is structurally important. This bit of glue is going to keep the motor mount attached, right? So I decided against using epoxy for a couple reasons. One is I don't love working with epoxy, so if I don't have to use it, I'd rather not. And I don't think that this is as vital structurally as I was worried about initially. If this was like the only thing holding the motor mount here to the rocket body, that could be a potential problem. The other thing is, so epoxy or a glue stronger than wood glue is necessary if you want to start using pretty heavy hitting mid-power motors. Now, mid-power motors, of course, have a lot of descriptors to them. The Estes kit here was designed to use E and Fs, but E and F like 15 and 16s. That's not a whole lot of abuse that the motor needs to put up with. All right, I'm going to reassemble this. So that's what's coming next. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. In any event, an F15 or 16 is a lot of total impulse, but it's not an obscenely large amount of maximum thrust. And the wood glue should be able to sustain that amount of abuse, is my hope. Oh, that was actually pretty accurate. All right, I realign the seams. Now the instructions say to let this, that's pretty wobbly. Oh, well, to let this, let's try that again. There we go. To let this rest while the glue dries. Hopefully that'll do it. Anyway, a 15 or 16 isn't going to rip apart a joint, a good, well-made joint made out of wood glue. If I want to put like an F30 in this or an F60, yeah, there should probably be some reinforcement with epoxy. And that being said, I think there's a good chance that when I eventually put this completely together, going down the barrel here, I might get some epoxy on a long dowel and just kind of dab it around all the way down back there. There's a decent chance that I end up doing that. There are going to be some other ways that I could strengthen this too, just to make sure the motor doesn't rip this whole thing apart. Anyway, that's pretty much as far as I can get right now, I think. So I need to leave this. That is not like even remotely set. It's not even kind of set. Anyway, I'm going to leave it like that. It's going to have to dry for a bit, and then I will be able to go on to the next step, which is to actually to glue this in place. Because, of course, right now, there's nothing connecting the motor mount to the rocket itself. That part's going to need epoxy. And you know what? I might end up just dab it a little on there because I'm going to take this part anyway. All right, so this needs to rest for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and then it's on to the next phase. Thanks for watching. See you next time.